if you want to grow, whether you want to start a business, grow in your career, you're kind of thinking about starting a business, you have a business, you have to be willing to do something that scares the stew out of you every single day. Making that phone call, asking for that bold favor, whatever it is. If you're not scaring yourself on a regular basis, you're not growing.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
This is episode 10 of the Amani Experience Podcast. We have Crystal Washington as our guest today. She's hailing from Houston, Texas, and she shares great wisdom, some good advice. Crystal and I both came up in hotels. We have that in common. I really enjoyed our conversation. I like the story she told us, and she also left us with some great advice about being a professional speaker. So enjoy the show, take a listen, and I will see you soon. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to introduce today's guest for us. I'm going to read you her bio first, and then we're going to talk to her. So today's guest works with organizations that want to leverage technology to increase profits and productivity. She is known as the Technology Translator. Infusing humor, she shares only the practical applications of social media apps and the web. Her clients comprise of Fortune 500 companies, including Google, Microsoft, and GE. As a sought-after keynote speaker, she has educated and entertained audiences across North America, Africa, and Europe. She regularly appears on major television networks and in business publications for her expertise. Outside of technology, she considers herself to be a travel fanatic and Afro puff aficionado. I love that. Please join me in welcoming Crystal Washington to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. We're excited to talk to you. I love the Afro Puffs aficionado. That's a great part of the bio there. Well done. So on the Amani Experience Podcast, one of our themes and kind of focuses is to talk to people who used to be in the corporate life but have then gone on to the creative life. And so we find that there's many interesting stories. So I wanted to see from you just what you started coming out of school and how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, my degree is in hospitality with an emphasis in sales and marketing. And so I went on to corporate to do sales in a hotel. So that kind of made sense, right? And kicking butt at that. I mean, I totally blew my numbers out of the water consistently. But I'm one of those rare people that's kind of right and left brained at the same time. So if I'm doing something that's too skewed one way, which sales is very much social, it's very creative. You know, you're creatively trying to capture their attention, think of little gifts. I felt like the analytical part of me was like dying. I felt like brain cells were committing suicide. So I told my boss when a revenue manager position opened up, which is basically like front-end accounting, but you're in charge of reservations as well, and some marketing. I told him I wanted that spot, and he was dumbfounded. He was like, who does that? That's like, it's actually a move that no one ever makes. So I was doing that, and I was kicking butt at that too. But there was this little thing called social media that was on the horizon, and it was really just starting off. And I knew that if businesses started using it, they would have a great deal of success with it. So I told my boss I wanted to explore how we could leverage that for our hotel. And he looked at me, and I'm in my early 20s at the time. And he said, look, kid, he said, you're cute, and you make us more money than we've ever seen anybody make us in your position. You're a cash cow. Stick to what you know. And I thought to myself, okay, bleep, bleep. And so about 6 months later, I actually quit my job to start a digital marketing firm because everything in me told me it was going to be huge. And so that's how I ended up quitting my job. It was one of those things where I was just driven, and I was obsessed, and I had no blueprint for this. It's not like in my family I saw a lot of that happening. My family actually thought I lost my mind, but it was one of the best things I've ever done.
Right. Right. So you grew up in hotels as well as I did. I used to work in hotels as well. So
Okay.
we have that in common. So that's cool. What was it? What made you decide, you know what, enough is enough with the hotels and I need to kind of go out on my own?
Well, a couple things were going on. One, I really don't like taking directions from people. And I don't mean just in an everyday interaction. Obviously, I take a lot of directions from my clients so that I can serve them. But in general, I found that in corporate, a lot of people were promoted to positions that, I'm just going to throw that out there. They weren't always that swift, and so, and I'm a very logical person. And so if I'm running numbers and the numbers tell us one thing and past experience, and you just want to do something else because that's what's more politically expedient within the organization, I'm going to have a problem with that. So that was hard. Also, I was in a company that had a lot of ethical issues. I had one of my boss's bosses was basically sexually harassing me. Another one of my boss's bosses was trying to get me to crook the books because I was basically the front end of accounting. And then there was all kinds of craziness at my job with sexism, racism. I had some of the craziest emails ever. If you just saw the things people were comfortable passing around. So it was a very toxic environment. But the wild part was, I loved what I did. And I was over a department in my early 20s. The people that worked for me were old enough to be my parents and grandparents. Like, I was so young, I wouldn't tell people my age. Like, if they asked my age, I would say, well, how old do you think I am? They'd say, oh, well, you look so young, but I guess you have to be 30 to be in this position. And I'd always say close enough. Because I'm not a liar, so I just say close enough. And that was it.
Right.
But I loved my employees. I loved what I did. But the environment itself was so toxic. And I felt like I was dying a slow death every single day.
Right. Okay. I can relate. So how did you get the courage? Because many people, we'll say 98 out of 100 people want to leave and do their own thing, but never do. How did you become one of those 2 out of 100 to leave and just say, you know what? I remember I read you said you had $120 to your name, but I'm going to take the leap.
Yeah.
How did you have the courage to take the leap?
Yeah, well, part of it is I'm probably kind of crazy. That's probably just number one. If I could just be very honest, I am wired a little bit differently than I think maybe some other people are, just having conversations with people. I've always been a pretty bold person, but that was even beyond my normal level of boldness. To make a very long story short, one day I was exercising on, I want to say it was September 17th, 2007. I was exercising early in the morning in my apartment gym, and a voice, like I heard a voice that said, you're going to be out of there in 30 days. And I get off the machine, I go look in the bathroom, I'm trying to figure out who's whispering. I'm wondering if I need to get on some meds. No, seriously, like I'm questioning my sanity. I was confused. So after I was certain there was no one in the building, I went home, I wrote in my journal like I normally did, and forgot that even happened. On October 17th, 2007, I went into work, and one of the assistants, a brand new assistant, Latino young lady, was crying. And I asked her, I said, what's wrong? And she had overheard a conversation 2 other managers were having about me that was very racist. And it kind of freaked her out. And so I told her, hey, I said, I appreciate your loyalty. I said, you don't have to be upset on my behalf. I said, you know who you work for now. Now you get the illumination. I'm fine. And as soon as that happened, the voice came back and it said, it's time to go and don't take anything from here with you. And at this point, I was like, okay, I really need to go to the doctor. Seriously. But I had so much peace. And I don't remember ever in my life being that at peace with something. And so I went to HR. I said, hey, bye. And they were trying to convince me to stay because I was making the money hand over fist. And they didn't think they had someone else who could do my job. Little did they know I'd been training a young Latino man the whole time on my job. They didn't know this, but I wanted him to have the position if I ever left. So they tried to get me to stay, and the GM and everything. And I told him no, and I called my attorney, and he was like, do you? I called my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband now. And I just went to my department, hugged everybody, said, y'all can have anything in or on my desk. And I was out. That was it.
Wow. Deuces. Peace out.
I got outside. I'll never forget this. And I remember it looked like, it probably looked like something from a TV show. I looked up and I saw the sun. and I started twirling around in my suit. I will never forget that. Like, I just remember feeling like, I'm free! And
wow.
I got home, and I called my mom, and I told her, and she said, are you sure you know what voice was speaking to you? What was that? It's like, it'll be okay. Yeah, I'm at peace. And I remember waking up at 3 a.m. the next morning, freaked out. I sat up, and I was like, and I pulled my diary out of my little nightstand, and I went back 30 days because I had just remembered that entry, and I was like, oh, what? So that was pretty crazy.
Very good story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. It makes me sound nuttier, but I'm welcome to share my truth.
No. You're very sane, very sane. You're not nutty at all. In today's environment, today's business environment, what do you feel is important for creative professionals to succeed?
Number one is an accurate understanding of business. Because there's a lot of people that get into creative professions. I'm a speaker. Obviously, I'm creating things. I am communicating, right? But what I find is that a lot of people that are not in oil and gas businesses or certain types of consulting, they get caught up in what they're delivering, and they don't understand the business decisions behind what they're doing. They don't know how to grow a business. They don't know how to scale a business. They don't know if it's even smart to scale a business. Because some businesses, once you start scaling them, you personally make less money. But people don't understand that. So I think understanding the numbers is critical. And most of the small business owners that I know that have gone under, and there's been a lot, they did not have a solid understanding of the numbers.
Okay. Interesting. You started your business back, let's say, October 2007. What was the turning point in your career?
Well, I kind of started it slightly when I was still working in corporate, but I mean, it was like break-even business at that point. But that's when I went full throttle in 2017. I think for me, I'm trying to think of pinpointing one point. So there's a series of things that happened, but I guess probably the biggest thing is what actually shifted my business, period. Because I started off with a digital consulting firm, and
Right.
I was having success with small businesses. I targeted them first because they're more agile, so they can get into social media and implement things quickly. Versus you try to go into a corporation and do that, it's hard, and you're fighting with legal and compliance at a time when they weren't using it yet. So it started with them, and then from there, I actually started having larger corporations contact me, which was pretty wild. So I had Google, British Airways, Microsoft. They contacted me for consulting work. And that was all going great, but the turning point really for me, I started having clients asking me, everyone's a member of professional organizations. They would say, Crystal, you do great work. The social media stuff, this is getting big. Can you come speak at the Association of XYZ's luncheon? And I would do that as favors to my clients. But I started getting so many requests that I started thinking I can't keep doing this. This isn't billable hours. And the first organization I said no to, Amani, said, oh, but we'll pay you. And I said, oh. And
here we go.
And so I started researching, and I said, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm in the wrong lane. And so I started speaking, but I was doing it at a very small level. That's, I was getting what they call honorariums. It was very small level. And I ended up coming into contact with this woman named McCullough. I won an award, and she was the magazine publisher that gave me the award's best friend. And we got copies of her books, and I read her book, and I loved it. And I posted about it on social media, and my post sold a ridiculous amount of books for her. And she was like, who are you? And she looked me up, and the next time we saw each other, she said, I looked on your website. She said, and I see that you're speaking a little bit, and you want to be a speaker. I said, yeah. She said, I've been a professional speaker for 10 years. She said, I'm going to make you a speaker. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was the turning point, because from that point on, she started to mentor me, and whatever she told me to do, I immediately did it. And I remember Monty, now this is the funny part for anyone listening. After I was working with her for a few months, she said, well, Crystal, I know you do consulting. She said, but you can only have one master. I said, what do you mean? She said, if you really want to be a professional speaker, I need you to give up your consulting. And I'm thinking, lady, are you crazy? This is paying the bills. But I knew she knew what she was talking about. And so I did it. And within 2 months, the revenue I was making from speaking had far exceeded what I was doing in consulting before. So I would say McCullough was my turning point.
Oh, nice, nice. Now, what advice would you give up and coming public speakers or people who are entrenched in their industry, but they want to become a thought leader, they want to be a public speaker? What advice would you give them?
So I'm just going to make a little distinction only because this is part of the advice. So if anyone wants to get paid to speak, number one, you have to title yourself a professional speaker versus a public speaker. Only because a public speaker can speak at churches and different places, but they don't necessarily get paid. So that's probably number one advice. You want to work towards being a professional speaker. Two is really, really understand your content and know what your topic is. So pick a lane. And a lane is not motivational, because just being a general motivational speaker, what happens, Imani, is a lot of people want to be professional speakers, and they have these stories of how they overcame things. And they think, I want to get on a stage and I want to tell my story and inspire people and they'll love me. And that's cute, but no one cares about our stories any more than it touches them personally. And that's not what companies pay for. You can go to churches and do that and speak for free. You can go to some of the smaller women's conferences. So understand your topic and research, research, research.
Got it. And I see you're a member of the National Speakers Association. How has that helped your speaking career?
Well, the great thing about the National Speakers Association, it is the only association that focuses on the business of speaking. So you have other organizations that might tell you that they're going to help you with your talks, and they may or may not. Or, we're going to help you inspire people. But that organization is about helping you build a business. And so that's been a key factor in my network, meeting other speakers, getting referrals from speakers. I'm also a CSP, a Certified Speaking Professional, which is something that maybe about probably worldwide, less than 5% of professional speakers have that designation. And that's the result of me really cultivating knowledge and networking within that organization, because it's not easy to get that designation.
Who are some of your favorite mentors in the public speaking field? Like for me, I love Les Brown. I listen to a lot of his old stuff. So what about you? Who are some of the people that you love to listen to?
There's a lot of different people. Now, when it comes to professional speakers, I tend to be more content driven. Now, this is going to sound funny, obviously, because this is my mentor, but I really do love watching Karen McCullough because she is so engaging. But there's so many. I mean, there's Thom. He does a lot of stuff in the business space. Jess, Pettitt, she's amazing when it comes to diversity. Marquesa, Pettway. I mean, I could literally go on and on. There's so many. But I tend to go more towards content-based speakers, not motivational. So not the people that are going to say you can do it, but more along the lines of people that say, this is what's new and this is what's breaking. Here's 3 tips for how you incorporate this to improve your life. I'm a lot more about actionable items. And that's why I teach technology, and I'm a technology translator, because while I speak to all kinds of audiences, most of them, Imani, actually are baby boomers. And I don't know any other speaker that speaks on technology like I do that can explain complex topics like big data and machine learning without using tech jargon to people that aren't techie.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Cool.
Cool. Now, there you go. Perfect. Why do you love what you do?
I love what I do because I love technology. But what's interesting is I love technology because I love people. I understand how technology can make people's lives better when it's used strategically. I see how it can even the playing field for people across different socioeconomic planes. I see what it can do for women that are carrying maybe more of the load in a household. I've just seen how it can impact people in their careers. And so I love what I do because I get to get on stage and explain it in a way to oftentimes to people that are a little scared or resentful of it. And when I see like their little eyes shine and you see those light bulbs go off, you can see it on people's faces. When you say something, they're like, oh, aha, I got it. I can do this. This is what I need to do for my job. Or this is how I get ahead here. Or this is how I grow my business. So I love seeing the aha moments pop up on people's faces.
Got it. And then on the flip side, what is something that scares you?
Something that scares me? I don't know if there's this thing scare. Well, I'll share this with you. I'm extremely introverted. And so I'm most comfortable in a corner reading a book, not in large crowds. I can turn it on to get on the stage to help people, But I think what's scary for me is that sometimes people can become overly attached and want to be BFFs. And that is something that naturally kind of scares me. Like, if there's one way to make me run away from you, it's to try to get too close too soon to me. Like, to just be like, oh, and then, can we go out to eat? And I know you just spoke here and you're going to be in my town. Let's do this. And I want you to come and meet my friend. Like, that's the quickest way to make me run away.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that if I started to email you every day and call you every other day, that would you wouldn't be wanting to talk to me anymore?
It would freak me out. That is how that would work. It would freak me out.
Oh, I get it. Cool. Talk to us about how a failure or an apparent failure sets you up for later success. Do you have like a favorite failure of yours?
I think I've actually been pretty fortunate. I know this is going to sound wild because, I'm sure people that are listening know that, sometimes for podcasts, you get an idea of questions that'll be asked. And I really dug in trying to figure out what's a big failure I've had. I don't know if I had a big failure, but I guess the closest thing would be the fact that I didn't do what I thought I was going to do in corporate. And so that's what caused me to jump ship. I mean, I could have stayed in there and I would have achieved my goals, but I guess the failure was me not understanding what it was. I didn't understand what I was signing myself up for when I was fresh out of college and trusting and thinking I'm going to work my way up to the top and it's going to be great. I didn't realize how much of my soul literally would have to die to get where I wanted to go. Serious? Well, because people that I know that had already gotten there, most of them were shells of people because of what they had to go through to get to that place. And I guess the failure was my just being extremely naive. And then when I saw what I had worked so much of my life for in school for those good grades and in college, those scholarships, and when I missed out on parties, when I saw what I worked for in corporate, it kind of disgusted me. So I guess that was a failure. But the great thing is that experience is what served as the catalyst for me to do what I really needed to be doing.
Exactly. Yes, I understand. Good. Now, you kind of spoke about it before when you said that you have the unique ability to explain these complicated technology and social media concepts to people in a very simple way so they understand it. Now, is that I want to ask, how do you rise above all the competition in your industry and distinguish yourself? Would that be the answer, or is there something else you want to add?
Well, I think that's one of the answers. The other way that I distinguish myself, and it's going to sound hilarious, is I'm a woman and I'm Black. So as funny as that sounds and as simple, the fact of the matter is, in my space where I speak, I'm it for the most part. On the level that I speak, because most of my clients are corporations and very large associations. So I'm not doing a small speaker circuit, Most of the speaking engagements I do, the general public is never going to see the flyers that I'm on because it's for your Berkshire Hathaways. It's for your Barron's conferences. It's for, these very large associations. So it's not public driven. It's private money, if that makes sense. Right. And so in that space, there's no one that really looks like me. So that by itself sometimes I think helps, because when people are trying to create some diversity, they're like, oh, look, she's a millennial. So first off, there's not a lot of people in my generation doing this on this level. She's a millennial. She's African American. She's a woman. They just checked off all their boxes. But on top of that, and most importantly, I deliver. When I show up, I know I'm good at what I do because I put a lot of energy into it. And I customize all of my talks, which is also rare in my industry. So I'm not giving some general talk that everyone's heard before. I'm actually getting in there, understanding your customers, your attendees, and directing it towards their industry. So I think all of those things together create a perfect storm. And then probably one last thing is I'm very easy to work with. Any of my clients will tell you they've had hiccups, they've had issues where their internal people didn't book flights they're supposed to for me, power has gone off on me, all kinds of crazy stuff. No matter what, I always make them feel better when they're panicking and say the show will go on. Whether I have to yell to a room full of 500 people because the AV isn't working, whether my presentation went down and I have to do it without it, I make their jobs easy. And so that's probably one of the number one reasons why clients rebook me.
Okay. And then you've had a massive amount of success in a relatively short period of time, because it takes a while to become successful, especially as an entrepreneur. What like, how do you get through the tough times? Because there has to be some peaks and some valleys. What do you do to kind of get through the tough times and continue to grow?
Okay, I'll share a little story that's kind of, it tends to tickle people. In the very beginning, I wasn't making a lot of money in my business. And so the business was making enough to pretty much break even and pay my basic bills. So if I wanted to do anything else, if I wanted to go to the movies, if I wanted to buy a pair of jeans, I had to figure out a way to make additional income. And so I'm a person that I observe patterns. And I was on Craigslist and I started to notice that at the beginning of the month, people went on there looking for moving boxes. At the end of the month, people, or actually just a couple weeks later, people were giving away free moving boxes because they had just moved and they didn't want to throw away all these boxes. And so I started flipping boxes. I would go to the people that had free boxes, and I would do this probably about 3 times a month. I'd grab like 3 different people's free boxes, and then I would turn around and hold them for a couple weeks, and then I'd flip them and I'd sell them for like $1.50 to $2 a piece, which is like half of what they'd normally cost at a box store. And I'd bring in an extra $200 to $300 a month. So that was my spending money. So nice. Weird, right? So
that's resourceful.
I made money flipping boxes. So silly. Mm. But that's it. I think you have to be resourceful. You look at what's around you, and if you're real quiet and you turn off your opinions and you just observe, there's ways to make money all around you. So I'm just one of those people. I will find a way.
That's very resourceful. Very impressed. Flipping boxes to speaking in front of Google. Look at that. Love it. How do you handle your critics?
Well, so it really depends. Now, some people when they're being critical actually have really, really great input. And so sometimes I even solicit for hardcore feedback. So for instance, with my books, with both books, when I wrote the first versions, they went through editing and I wanted kind of a general public view. I actually asked for book assassins. And I had about 20 people sign up, well, more than 20, but I selected 20 people for each book. And I actually called it book assassins because I wanted them to know I needed them to be brutal. I wanted them to kill it. So anything that they saw, they could point out. Because normally what happens, if you ask for feedback and people like you, they're not going to give you honest feedback. They're going to say, oh, that's nice. Or they're going to kind of cotton candy it up a little bit. So I found there's sometimes in my career, it makes sense to you're literally asking people to just murder you or your product or your item. And if you do that, then it takes the weight off of them. They don't feel bad anymore, and they can give you their honest opinions. And some are going to be really nice, and some, it's not that they're not nice, they're going to point out things, and it's so helpful. So I always look through criticism and see, is there something here I can take away from here? Now, sometimes people are just mean, and as a speaker, you're never going to make everyone in the room happy. Well, I mean, occasionally you can, but it's pretty rare because people are so different. And so, for instance, Les Brown, he's going to have a lot of people in the room that love him, but then he's going to have people that might say, well, that's not substantive enough. Or I don't like his style of, he sounds like a minister. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be that. So you have to figure out how much of it is people that don't like your style. There's nothing you can do about that. And then even sometimes when it's delivered in a mean way, because I've had that happen occasionally. Actually, I've had like 2 really mean reviews. But in one of those really mean reviews, they actually had something meaty in there. So I was able to say, you know what? Put my ego aside. This is actually helpful. And everyone else in their session gave me a 10 out of 10. But this one person gave me a 1. They grilled me. And so it was like literally like a couple hundred perfect scores in this terrible one. And it's easy to say, oh, that's just the one. But there was some meat to it. So I was like, you know what? If I were to do what they're suggesting, this would be even more amazing. So you just have to be open.
Good. Now, thinking back to when you first started as a professional speaker to now, what have been some of your most memorable speeches?
Oh, so many. I think one of the coolest ones was, it actually happened exactly 3 years to the date that I walked off on my job. I was on a stage in Accra, Ghana, speaking at the Woman 2.1 Summit. That was wild, just to be in Africa, speaking to a room full of people. I've had so many. I mean, I did one where I was speaking to students and teachers, and it was about 7,000 people. That just that sheer number. 'Cause I've done, a couple thousand, but just seeing all the faces and the kids and knowing that I can impact them was amazing. And I did an event a couple weeks ago that was really wild. They had like pyrotechnics and stuff going on in there with them. It's like, oh, this is different. So I don't know. They're all so different. And I mean, I've spoken to farmers, just a small group of farmers. I've spoken to the CEOs of companies like Home Depot. So most of my talks are actually pretty memorable. It's the nature of the business. Everyone is different. Everyone is different and unique, and there's always something funny or interesting or wild about each and every talk.
Okay. Now, you've been an author of 2 books so far. What's the next topic or next subject you're going to cover in your next book?
I have people like fighting with me online over what I should write about. So can I plead the fifth? I'm still trying to figure this out, because here's the thing. I speak on technology. The first book is The Social Media Why. The second one is One Tech Action. And the second one is more about technology for efficiency in general. Social media apps, all kinds of stuff. The first one's about social media. So I might do something kind of along similar lines. But then the other thing I'm getting is most people that are connected to me on social media know that I'm also very big into family research. And I've found some amazing things using technology. And so I have all these people that want me to write a book now about researching family, which really has nothing to do with my speaking topic. So I've been fighting them off for years. I don't know if I'll be able to keep fighting them off, Amani.
You can plead the fifth this one. We'll come back to another day and time for that update.
Okay.
So you went to University of Houston. You're born and raised in Houston, Texas?
I was raised in Houston, Texas. I'm originally from Gary, Indiana, but I've been here for over 20 years. And yes, I graduated from U of H. Go Cougs.
All right, go Cougars. So, and you were at the Conrad Hilton School of Hospitality, I believe?
I was.
Yeah, okay. Good. I know that school well. Being part of, I went to Howard University, so our hospitality program, National Society of Minorities in Hospitality. So Houston was a member, so I know your school well.
Okay, awesome.
Now, if you could sit down with 21-year-old you and share some advice, what would you share?
21-year-old me, I probably wouldn't want to change things too much. I'd be scared to skew things too much, because it's what, every decision I've made, even misconception, has led me to where I am. But if there's one thing I could probably say is always go with your gut. Always. And then part 2 of that is there's no one right way. Because I think a lot of times people are looking for what's the right way to create a contract? What's the right way to approach people about this? What's the right way to... And there's very rarely an ultimate right way to do things. You just find your best way. And so I think just figuring that out, most adults, like 21's adult, but most adults, quote unquote, haven't figured that out. So there's no perfect way to do things. There's your way, and you figure out the best way to make it happen that's of service to other people.
Okay, good. Now, in the past year or so, maybe it could be a little longer, what's one new habit that you've added to your daily routine that has been beneficial?
Something I learned from Tim Ferris, who's the author of The 4-Hour Workweek, and actually that book was one of the first books I read when I quit my job. It changed my life. But he has a podcast that's awesome, pretty good. And one of the things he talked about in there is this habit of writing 3 pages of thoughts as soon as you wake up every day. It's like kind of like puking on paper. And it's really great, because what happens is all the things that you carry around in your head that keep you from being productive, or even some of the great ideas you have, just getting it out on paper makes a huge difference. And it's like it clears you up for the rest of the day. And if you want to go back and reference something, or at the end of the week look back at some of your ideas, it's amazing. So I think that's a habit that I've created this year that has really caused a shift for me.
Nice. We're big fans of Tim Ferriss as well. We've read Tools of the Titans, and looking forward to his next one. I think his next one's Tribe of Mentors, I believe it's called, coming out in like a couple weeks, I want to say.
Yes, it's right around the corner. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, since we're talking about books, it's a perfect segue. We love talking about books on the show. So if there is 1, 2, or 3 books that you feel people should stop what they're doing and read them right away, what books would those be?
The first one, if they're wanting to start a business, is Get Clients Now. If it's a service-based business, by C.J. Hayden. It is the best book for sales and marketing that I have ever encountered. I started using that at the beginning of my business. I attribute a lot of my growth and success to that. I liked it so much, I started doing coaching for it. So I'm actually a licensed facilitator. I don't get a chance to do the classes very often. I do them maybe once every 1 to 2 years, but it's just that amazing. So definitely need to read that one. Let's see what else. I still like, I mean, I know that Tim Ferriss has these other books that are amazing. And you know, I read the Tools of the Titans. I have that on my phones, actually, so I can read it anytime. But I do think the 4-Hour Work Week is still a really good base book for people because it gets people into the habit of outsourcing, which is imperative for growth. You can't grow in business unless you start outsourcing some things. So that's probably a good one. And I'm trying to think. Maybe one more is You, the Owner's Manual by Michael Rosen and Dr. Oz, just because it's just a really good health book, you know, just so that you can understand how your body's working. Because in the midst of all these wonderful things we're doing in our lives, starting businesses or building careers, if we don't take care of our bodies, none of it matters because we're going to fall over dead. So I'm a big fan of incorporating fitness and holistic health and mental health into everything we do.
Nice. And what do you do to kind of incorporate that into your daily life? Any specific tips or advice for that?
After I'm done kind of puking on the page for 3 pages, I meditate every morning. I drink 2 liters of water every day. I exercise average about 4 times a week. I'm pretty much putting my therapist's whole family through school. I go to my therapist religiously, at least once a month. And I'm really, that's one thing I'm a huge proponent of. I think everybody should find some form of therapy that works for them. I don't care if you think you have problems or not. In business, as you encounter different things, if you're a business owner, your personal issues and your insecurities will show up in your business. If you have a hard time asking family members to pay you back, you're going to have a hard time invoicing your clients and following up. And so,
very true.
So that's why I think, especially if someone wants to start a business, you could have the most ideal childhood in the world. You still need to go to therapy. It's just helpful, and it helps you having someone who's objective, who does not know you, who can cause you to examine your beliefs in a way that can help you move forward in all areas of life. But in this case, we're talking about business.
Right. Okay, good. That's a great tip. Thank you. Let's go to online. How can people find you online?
My website is Crystal Washington, Crystal spelled like the rock, crystalwashington.com. And if they go on there, they can find the links to find me on all social media. They can find my email address, which is still easy, Crystal at Crystal Washington. So yeah, just the website is the perfect way to find me. And you can find my books there. So any kind of way you want to connect with me, the website.
Cool. And which social media kind of platform do you live on the most?
I'm probably on Facebook the most because remember, my target market is more baby boomers.
Got it. Makes sense. So before we go, we're almost done. Is there anything fun, interesting, or important that we haven't talked about that you want to share with us?
Fun, interesting, or important? You know, I don't know if this is a business thing, but I'll tell you about something fun. No, seriously. It's technology, so I'll share that. If people aren't out there just trying out virtual reality, it's fun. I have an Oculus Rift. I'm looking at my Oculus Rift right now. This is fun. I had the pleasure of speaking at an event last week, and one of the other speakers, who's a good friend, was actually demoing different types of VR, and they asked for volunteers. So I volunteered to help my friends. So I was speaking on Oculus Rift because I own one. And putting that on people and seeing people's reactions to being transformed into different worlds and experiences that were 3D, and you look around and you're actually in this other room or space, it was just magical seeing people's reactions. So for any adults, if you're trying to figure out what to get yourself for Christmas, can I just recommend getting yourself an Oculus Rift or some type of VR headset? It's fun. How about that?
I love it. That was great. Random. Thank you. Random, but perfect. Any questions that maybe I should have asked you during this interview that we didn't cover?
I think one thing that I get all the time, just because I speak on technology and social media specifically, is people always ask me, if I have a business, what's the best social network to be on? And I always tell people that's like asking, what's the best appliance to use in the kitchen? What are you trying to make? A smoothie? Don't use the oven. So I always tell people, when you're building a business, if you're looking to connect with people on social media, look at the demographics of that social network and then go where your people already are. Don't try to pull them someplace where they're not, but go where they already are and communicate with them where they prefer to be.
Brilliant. Nice. All right, so we're going to get out of here. But before we go, any last words of advice or wisdom you want to share with our audience?
I guess last words is I have a saying that I created, and that is I eat fear for breakfast every day. And so if you want to grow, whether you want to start a business, grow in your career, you're kind of thinking about starting a business, you have a business, you have to be willing to do something that scares the stew out of you every single day. Making that phone call, asking for that bold favor, whatever it is. If you're not scaring yourself on a regular basis, you're not growing.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you very much for being on the Amani Experience podcast, Crystal. We'd love to have you back on the show in the future. And if you're ever in LA, make sure you let me know because we'd love to link up. And thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.